a good friend of mine, Michael Broadwill, and his wife, Sandra Broadwill, they had this van build, and all three of us actually are board members with the Bluegrass Wildwater Association. And tonight, Michael gave a very cool presentation on van life and building vans. And so I'm going to show the video of him doing his presentation. And I'm pretty knowledgeable on this stuff, but Sandra and Michael, I mean, they've got just countless days and hours and travel time. And Michael even lived full time in his van for quite a while, and just has a lot of experience to speak from. So I hope you guys enjoy what Michael's got to say.
All right, so can everybody hear me okay? I don't know how well the speaker is going to do. So tonight I'm going to be talking about van life, but more in general talking about how you can have a little more comfortable of a camping experience, whether it's in a car, a minivan, maybe a fully built out van like this, or even an RV. So it's how to make van life work for you. So this is kind of the first thing that if you start van life is you get tons of questions. A lot of them revolve around where do you poop and where do you live? Do you live down by the river? If you get a van, you will constantly get that question no matter what. So first thing I want to talk about is managing expectations. Instagram has been really bad about making people think that you can go out, get a van, and your life is suddenly going to be so much better, so much easier. It's not really like that. I lived in the DC area for 1.5 years in this van before moving back to Lexington, and it's more of the same, but it's like all the problems you have with a house are now combined with all the problems you have with a car. If you're doing a custom build, something really good to remember is your build time when you're doing this planning. At least multiply your guests by 2, probably 3 or 4. So if you think it's going to take you a week, it's probably going to take you a month. Also, be realistic about your budgets and your needs. So a lot of people don't need the full-on brand new Sprinter van with the nicest solar panel system and the lithium batteries and the full build out. A lot of people, just a very simple, like even a minivan, an older minivan with some older go-kart batteries in it would probably work for 80% of people's needs. But I mean, a lot of that depends on your budget and what you want for comfort. So the big questions that I usually get about van life, number one, and these are what we're going to cover tonight, where do you use the restroom? Where do you shower? Where do you park? How do you deal with the extreme temperatures? And then a lot of the technical details on like electricity and plumbing, what kind of bedding works, and some of the food recommendations, as well as some of my favorite links for van life resources, and which there are a bunch of those now. All right, so the number one question, anyone here who already has a van, and if anyone knows you have a van, they ask you is, how do you use the restroom? So going number one, if you have a custom van or if you have like a car or a minivan or something, honestly, you can go the route of like a nice little cassette toilet or something, but a big wide mouth Nalgene bottle, I mean, that's not a bad option, and it's very easy. Number two is a little more difficult. Once again, you can have a cassette toilet. There are a lot of options for composting toilets, either DIY, which will range about $100 to do a build yourself, to buying a purpose-built composting toilet, which I think those are around $800 to $900. So those are quite expensive. The option that I use is a fold-out toilet seat, which is kind of like a folding chair, and then I put a wag bag over that and then do my business there. So I can either do it, as gross as it is, do it in the van, or if we're out somewhere really scenic and beautiful and remote, like way out west with beautiful mountains and everything else, I can also carry that little folding chair to the side and like enjoy some beautiful scenery while I do my business.
How do you discard of it?
Discard is the same as diapers. So not the most eco-friendly or anything, but
Throw it away.
yeah. So the easiest solution for restroom needs though are to use a restroom that's not in the van. I think, so I used to have a composting toilet in this van. I ended up getting rid of it and selling it because we ended up only using it about 6 times the whole time we owned it, which was about 1.5 years. The best resource you have for restrooms are, what are you doing that day? Are you going to be going near a gas station or somewhere else that has restroom facilities? And kind of as weird as it sounds, if you're doing this longer term, planning your day, you kind of get in that mode of planning your day around your restroom breaks. Bathing. So this one's pretty straightforward. If you're a full-timer or traveling for like a month or so, I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, have heard about Planet Fitness and their Platinum membership, which gives you access to their showers. That's excellent. I used that while I was in DC. It was super easy, super nice. They have like massage beds in there as well, so that's cool. You can also do a built-in shower. That's a little bit more substantial work because you have to have a hot water heater, unless you're really hardcore and you are fine with cold water. And you can also do some different DIY options. I've seen people take PVC pipe and put it on the roof of their van, paint it black, and put an air pump connector up to the top, and they'll actually compress the air in the PVC tank on top of the van, and then they can run that down to a shower head, so it is both heated and pressurized. And as long as you don't mind the water up there sloshing around or have a way to pump it up there, it's not a bad solution for this. Weekenders, you'd be amazed at how long you can go without a shower and not be too stinky, especially if you're a whitewater kayaker. You're in the water. When I was up in DC, I boated a lot on the Potomac, and I stayed decently fresh. I mean, the Potomac's not the cleanest, but it was better than nothing some of the times. Then you have like campground showers. You also have truck stop showers, which are cheap. And I don't know if any of you have used a truck stop shower, but they're actually pretty nice. They're like Pilot and Flying J. They keep them clean, and they're a good service. And finally, if you're desperate, you can do something like wet wipes or boil a pot of water on the stove and use a rag. And that goes a long way if you need it to. Another big question is, where do you park your van? So anyone here who does van life regularly or is looking for free camping spots, you've probably gotten pretty good at getting on Google Maps or using free services like freecampsites.net to find good quality free camping. The first on my list, if I can't find anything on freecampsites.net, which is kind of like the gold standard for free camping for vans, is BLM or Forest Service land. Honestly, if you're going somewhere, call their regional office. They are really happy to help and provide information. If you're going to Utah and you're going to be in the Kaibab National Forest, call their regional office. The rangers would love to talk to you and tell you where you can camp for free. The second part on here, like I was saying, there's an art to finding free campsites. A lot of it is looking at places that are kind of out of the way. When I lived in DC, I actually parked near an apartment construction area that they had stopped construction on. So there was like 2 blocks of parking that had no buildings on it, but people still regularly parked there. So I would pull in there at night, park the van, and be kind of blended in with other cars, and then in the morning I would go to my daytime parking spot. If you're full-timing in the city, that's something I would recommend, is to alternate your daytime and nighttime spots. The number one rule for camping in a van though, if you're not in the wilderness areas, is don't be a nuisance. Don't ruin it for everybody else. So if you lived on a street and you would think that someone parked outside your house for 3 days in a row would be a nuisance, don't do that. So in a pinch, and especially while traveling, rest stops are very easy. Some rest stops, they say you're not allowed to overnight camp. I have never been kicked out of a rest stop. Cracker Barrels are another good, easy one. Walmart parking lots used to be a good one, but that's changed over time. If you're going to do one of those, I'd recommend calling ahead before, so you don't get the 4 a.m. knock. Yes, Floyd.
Do you feel safe at rest stops?
Very much so, yeah. There's not been any times I've really felt in danger, though I've been a little sketched out in certain cities that I've stayed in. And that's because I haven't had time to really plan and look for a spot. Yeah, Lowe's or Home Depot. Yeah, I imagine those are, I've never tried one of those. Yeah, yeah. One area that I would recommend to avoid is parks, whether that is a city park or outside a city. They have employees who will typically come in and check early morning and early evening. The only time that I've actually gotten the quote unquote knock was at a park outside of Asheville that I missed the sign that said do not camp here. And I had a very friendly ranger at about 6 a.m. in the morning shining a light in my face being like, hey, you can't camp here, but you can stay here today. So usually it goes fine, but yeah, those I typically avoid now. So yeah, we got into parking etiquette, change locations often, read the signs, yeah, all that's good. If you're full-timing, daytime parking is also something to consider, but that's typically pretty easy. If you're staying in an area long enough, you'll figure that out. It's wherever is a good place for other people to park during the day is a good place for you. Dealing with extreme temperatures. So this is one that is very hard, especially if you're on a budget and you're in the Southeast where we have a lot of humidity and heat in the summer. So insulation, whether it's heat or cold, is a great option if you plan on spending a lot of time in the van. This van here is very insulated, and I find in the summer it gets no hotter than ambient, which without air conditioning is the best that you can hope for. It also retains the heat very well with our little propane furnace that we have inside. So when I lived in DC, I had a lot of hot summer nights. One of the biggest recommendations for anyone, whether you're in a car or a super souped up camper van, I would recommend if you're in a hot area is getting a small fan, small 12-volt fan or even battery powered that you can hang over top and blow air on you. Even in those 90-degree nights in DC, even though I wasn't super happy about it, that fan blowing and my ventilator fan on the roof, but especially the fan blowing air across me, really kept me cool at night and made it possible for me to get some sleep. AC, of course, is very, that's awesome to have, but it's very energy intensive. You're talking about a huge bump in your budget to have an AC system, especially if it is connected to your batteries. They make AC systems now that are 12 volts. They run about $2,300 to $2,500. The lithium systems that you need to power those are going to run you, with the batteries and the charge controllers and all that, at least around $1,500, if not another $2,500, if you build on your own or you buy them pre-made. The best option for dealing with extreme heat is go somewhere that's air conditioned, or go take a walk wherever you are. Do something else that's not inside the van. Also, be extremely mindful of your animals. I know that kind of goes without saying, but they don't always deal with heat as well as we do, because we have a really good heat exchange system with our sweating, so we can deal with stuff pretty well. Our little critters, not so much. Moving on to extreme cold, if you have the budget, I would highly recommend a furnace system. So this means your intake and exhaust in your heating system is actually outside the vehicle, and so it heats a heating element, which then has hot air blown across and into the vehicle. So the Mr. Buddy heaters that are very popular and very affordable work great in a pinch, and they work great for a weekend rig, but they also introduce into your vehicle a ton of humidity. So my first van build, I used a Mr. Buddy, and anytime I turned it on, instantly my whole van interior in the winter would be covered in condensation. So that's the problem that you have with that. You need a lot more ventilation, and you need your windows cracked to at least run that. So yeah, we talked about the fuel furnaces. I have a propane furnace in mine. There are affordable options for these now if you're inclined to do a little bit of handyman work. And those are the Chinese diesel heaters. I think they run around 150 or so. You can have a separate tank on them that you fill with diesel fuel. How much? 130, yeah. So they're very, very affordable. I've heard good things about them. A lot cheaper than the Dometic diesel heater. You could buy, I think, like 10 of those before you pay for the Dometic heater. Oh yeah, and last two items on here, electric heater. So this is your standard little plug into the wall. If you're somewhere that you have shore power, those work great, super easy. I actually, when this is parked at our house, I plug one of those and keep it on the minimum setting just to keep things from freezing. But the other option is heavy blankets and hot water in water bottles. Putting hot water in a water bottle when you go to sleep, I mean, that's been around forever and it works very well. One other thing I wanted to talk about with the cold is, so starting the night with a hot water bottle and starting the morning with hot tea or coffee definitely takes the edge off, especially if you can reach and turn on the coffee pot or turn on your furnace while you stay in bed. It makes it a lot easier. Electricity. So this is another one of those big question items that a lot of people have. A lot of people think they see all these Instagram vans with these huge, really nice looking solar panel systems. Like I said at the very beginning of the talk, I think 90%, if not more, of people don't need that. Usually when you're vacationing or you're weekending, or even if you're full timing, you're driving around enough that you can use a battery to battery charger or a relay system to charge your house batteries, your auxiliary batteries, and keep those powered sufficiently. So the one part that I would say if you do need solar panels is if you're going to be parked for a long time. So when I was living, I built this van basically to live in DC when I was up there. I knew I would be parked and stationary for 5 business days before I went to the mountains every weekend. So I needed something to keep my batteries charged. So I put in a solar panel system. If you don't, like I was saying, if you don't have that need, if you're a weekender, if you're traveling a lot, the best you can go with is a smart battery to battery charger. Those actually will take care of your batteries a lot better. They convert the amperage and the voltage and a power input to your batteries based on their charge level. That'll keep from damaging them and extend the life of those batteries. The cheaper option, which I think is around 50 or 60 bucks, is to use a relay that goes from your van battery to your house batteries. That will charge with whatever current the alternator is putting out, which is not always the best current for your house batteries. But it works. Like, it's not a bad system, especially if you're on a budget. Another option for power is a generator. I typically don't really like these because they're loud in campsites and loud in nature. But they do allow you, if you have a need for AC or something that's more power intensive, they do work, and there are some ones that are a little more quiet. As far as battery banks are concerned, the two big systems that you'll see out there are lead acid, which are like your AGMs or gel batteries, or your flooded lead acid. Flooded lead acid is the cheapest, but it requires you to put distilled water in it to keep up your electrolyte levels in there. So a little bit of maintenance, but they're a lot less expensive. The other type of lead acid batteries are AGMs, or like golf cart batteries. These are mid-range on the price, and they're pretty durable. And finally, to lithium, which has really come down in cost and is a lot more approachable in the past few years. You can get really nice lithium batteries from sources like Battle-Born batteries, and I know there's others out there. Or you can even do a DIY build if you're tech savvy and don't mind messing around with electronics. Or I forgot the third option. You have pre-built systems where, let's say you have your minivan, you don't want to deal with any of the electrical stuff. You just want something that works, that you can plug things into. Goal Zero, Jackery, those systems where you have your inverter, your lithium battery, and all the connections all in one system ready to go. Those are probably the easiest out there and the most approachable if you don't mind spending a little bit of cash on a system that works for you.
And you can still charge those when you're driving, right?
As far as I know, I think Cobes has
Yeah,
one.
I got a 3000, and the reason I went that route, I have a built-in system in my rig too, but I wanted a little extra oomph. Was I thought I can carry it in the house and plug my fridge into it in a power down situation. So it gave me a little bit of versatility. But I already had a simple system in my rig. But I got it goes there as a 600 watt charger. So if I do have electricity or I do have to run a generator for a short period of time, I can charge it pretty fast.
All right, so moving on to water and plumbing. There is a lot of options for water and plumbing that can go from basically free to very expensive. Fresh water, the more plush side of things, you can have polyethylene water tanks. So these are kind of like your big opaque plastic tanks. We've got a 33-gallon tank in this van, so we can stay off-grid pretty long. If you're going to be in cold areas, you want to make sure you keep it above freezing as well as your pipes. So I actually have mine installed inside, but a lot of vans, you can install them underneath. You also need some form of plumbing, whether it's a simple foot pump or something else to get the water to where you need it. The very easy option is just water bottles and water jugs. In fact, you can get like I think like a 7-gallon or so jerry can style water jug, and they come with little water pump adapters that you can have a little foot pump and just pump out of the can. Those are very simple and very inexpensive, and they work great. There's nothing wrong with going that option. Gray water, so this is all the water that is not human waste. So this is like shower water, dishwater, any of that kind of stuff. This also you have a lot of options on. You could just not have a gray water tank. So if like more like backpacking kind of cooking and stuff, or camping kind of situations dealing with any of that, you can have tanks underneath your sink. That's a very simple option. Once again, you can get like the blue water jug up here. You can simply run that from your sink to that, and you have to take it out every once in a while and empty it, but not a big deal. Though if you are storing it inside, that can start to smell. And finally, you can also have a more dedicated system either under the van or inside the van. So one of the big improvements I'm going to be making on this van soon is I'm going to be installing a gray water tank under the van, where I'm going to be taking some heavy-duty PVC, PVHC, whatever the nice PVC pipe is, and running the gray water down into that so that I actually have a larger capacity than I think I have 14 gallons right now, and I want a little bit more. And I also want it outside the vehicle so it doesn't smell. Yeah, so to drain that, it'd be just like a standard RV where you go to a dumping station. The one convenient part about the jugs is right now I can take those out, take them to a bathroom or a restroom facility and empty them into there. It's not a big deal. Even though it's not typically bad for the environment, well, it can be bad for the environment. It's very frowned upon to dump gray water tanks somewhere that you're not supposed to. So van lifers get a lot of grief over stopping on the side of the road or leaving a campground and dumping their gray water tank out when they leave, because that attracts a lot of animals. It smells, especially in more sensitive environments. It's just not a good thing to do. So try to avoid that. Yeah, so to keep the smell down and kind of keep it contained in there with the system I have right now, I use an enzyme that's specifically developed for gray water tanks. It's very cheap and it works pretty well. So yeah, black water, if you're doing a DIY build, my hat's off to you if you're putting in a black water tank in your van. So this is all your human waste. I didn't want to deal with that, so I avoided it altogether. I have, like at the top of the slides, have a totally separate bathroom system for those needs. But I'm sure there are resources online if you do want to endeavor to install a black water tank in your van. Yeah, and then getting water to your sink. I have a water pump that is pressure sensitive, so when I open the tap on my sink, the water pump starts and I get water. It's just like at home, though there's a small hum whenever I turn it on. And like I mentioned before, you can use little hand pumps, a lot of options for this. And honestly, it was pretty easy to install with the piping options that are available at any hardware store. So, oh, I'm having a brain fart. Small little diameter pipe for plumbing. PEX, yeah, thank you, PEX pipe. PEX pipe is great, super easy to work with. And especially with the little PEX pipe clamps, if you're doing any of the plumbing, I really believe anybody can do it and not have a not have a leaking system. So PEX pipe. And finally, on water conservation is huge if you're going to be off grid or don't want to be filling up your tanks all the time. So we don't have a shower in this van, so I don't have to deal with using a lot of water in a shower. But washing the dishes uses a ton of water. And that means you have to fill your freshwater tank up more often, and you have to empty your gray water tanks more often. The way everyone has their own techniques, but there is an art to washing dishes and using barely any water. I typically wash them all first, get them all clean, set them in a little pile, and put them back in the sink, dribble a little water over them, and then get all the soap off that way. And it amazes me how little water I can use and have my OCD self with clean dishes be satisfied that they are actually clean. But experiment, find out what works for you. Bedding and sleeping. This one's kind of all over the place. Once again, it's depending on how comfortable you want to be, how much money you want to put in. You can throw a sleeping bag and a ground pad or some foam in the back of a van and be totally fine, and there's nothing wrong with that. You can also buy nice bedding. A lot of people use foam. I personally like organic cotton futon mattress that I custom built for this vehicle, and it's super comfy. It doesn't smell like chemicals, and it really wasn't that expensive to order and build. And that I would just recommend looking online. And when I say futon, it's basically just a big mattress that is comfy. I don't know how to describe it any other way. It folds up or rolls up. Yeah, so one really important part about bedding and sleeping is moisture control. So the human body produces, depending on how big you are, around 200 milliliters of water a night. And all that water is going to stick and condensate on the surface, depending on the temperature in the van, on the cold surfaces. So these are like the metal that is exposed in the van, any of your windows. So when you wake up in the morning, you're going to have a lot of condensation. Depending on where it goes, this can develop mold problems, which you want to avoid. So I would highly recommend at night having some sort of either your windows cracked or something, and if possible, have some sort of ventilation where you're drawing air through the vehicle. With the system I have, we've never really had any issues with condensation, and it's not that complicated. It's just crack a window, have a roof vent. I mean, it's pretty simple. If you're in a car, crack the windows, same thing. And you can, if you're afraid of bugs getting inside, like mosquitoes, you can take some screen material and some magnets and attach it, or you can even buy something that's purpose-built. There's a lot of options for that. Yeah, I think that covers that pretty well. Food and cooking. So this one, this is where it gets kind of complicated depending on how nice of food you want. Once again, it can be backpacking rules, so it's all your backpacking food or stuff you would eat camping normally. You really want to keep in mind if you have limited cooler space or limited fridge space, to have stuff that is mostly dry until you cook it. So pasta, beans, couscous is real good. Items, fresh fruit and veggies, those are all really good items. Onions, potatoes, that kind of stuff. One way to keep food cool if you do want to refrigerated stuff is a cooler with ice. You can spend a whole bunch of money, not very much money on those. You do have to make sure you empty it out, or you're going to have a cooler full of water and a bunch of soggy food. If you want to get really deluxe, you can also get a 12-volt fridge. These are expensive. They range around, I think, $800 to $1,500, depending on who you're buying it from. I will say the Engel fridge that I have in this van is my favorite item that I've bought the entire time I've owned this van, more than anything else. It's super easy. It sips just a little bit of electricity, so I don't have a high power demand. And it is really convenient having an actual refrigerator in my vehicle that I can either cool drinks, cool water, or have fresh meat and stuff in. So an older option, propane fridges. A lot of RVs have this. You do have to have level ground for these, so if you're adventuring around, I really wouldn't recommend a propane fridge, though they do have propane electric hybrids. Stove, so cooking. Once again, you can either do backpacking stuff or you can put in a really nice range or oven. I have a 2-burner range in my van. I really like it. It kind of feels homey to have something that resembles an at-home cooktop. Works really well. There's not too much to say. It's cooking on a stovetop. As far as ovens go, there are a few oven options that do use propane. And I should mention mine is a propane stovetop. There are a few oven options that use propane. You do have to really be mindful of the gaps in between the oven and your cooking cabinets. I actually don't have one of those, but I do have what's called an Omnia stove, and it's a small sailboating stove. It looks kind of like a weird bunt pan, but you put it on top of a cooktop surface, and it works like a normal convection oven. So just put it on top of a burner. We actually, over Christmas break, we were down in Columbus, Georgia at the Whitewater area down there, and we made brownies for everybody on New Year's Eve, and they turned out great. So Omnia stove is one that I'd recommend if you do want to bake stuff or do like roasted veggies or something. There are options for electric cooktops. So these are like your induction cooktops. They do require a fair bit of power. So you're probably in a fair high draw, so you probably want a lithium system for those. I don't know a whole lot about induction cooking, especially in a van, so I'm probably not the best resource on those. And probably the most important part about cooking, a fire extinguisher and smoke detectors. Do not cook in your vehicle without one of these, and I would probably add a carbon monoxide detector on that as well. This stuff, like the most horrifying thing for van life is a fire in the vehicle. That is my biggest fear more than anything else, more than strangers breaking in, more than a wreck on the highway or something, is a fire in the vehicle. Smoke detector, fire extinguishers. I actually have 3 fire extinguishers in this van. I have 1 in my kitchen and 2 in the back. I've used one of them once, but thankfully it was not on my vehicle. It was on a short aside, a car had flipped on the highway and was on fire at 2 a.m. So there went one of my fire extinguishers, but they're great to have on you. And they're really great if something goes wrong because they work fast. Extras, so getting to the end of the talk here. So this is kind of like if you have some money to spend or you have some specific needs, these are kind of some of the items you can pick up. Traction boards, if you're going off-road, are the minimum if you're kind of worried about the traction and you're going to be way out in the boonies that I would recommend. They work really, really well. I would recommend watching a video or 2 on how to best use them, but they can really get you out of sticky situations, especially if you have stock tires on your vehicle. Max Trax is kind of the premium brand for traction boards. They're very expensive, I think, for what they are. They're about $300 for 2 of the traction boards, but X-Bull is the more budget brand that seems to get good reviews. That's what I have, and I have used them. I don't think I've actually used them for this van, but I have used them on friends' vehicles who have gotten stuck in the snow. Another item, and this one is really, really stretching it for a luxury item, but that's a cell booster. So if you're going to be out west or somewhere really remote where you are going to be camping on BLM land or Forest Service land a lot, a cell booster can really come in handy. For the really nice ones, like the one I have on the screen here, which is WeBoost is the brand, that's one of their most powerful model with the big mast antenna. That runs about $600. And so the caveat with cell boosters is if you don't have any service, it will not boost the non-existent service to begin with. So if you're somewhere where you have like 1 bar of like 3G or 4G, it's like not enough to actually use. but it's there. Turn on the cell booster and you're gonna be streaming videos, doing whatever you want. It works really well. If you're somewhere that has like H or something else and you do have some service, it'll still work for you, but don't expect a bunch. If you're way out in the middle of nowhere and you have no service, you can maybe get some signal, but it's very hit or miss. I will say with our vehicle, so cell towers are they're basically line of sight reception. So the higher up you can get your antenna, that's why like standing on top of the hill works for your cell phones. So like when we're way out in the middle of nowhere and have like just a little bit of service, or we want to see if there's something out there, I raise up that 3-foot mast that I have our antenna on here on the side of the van. And there's been places where we have had no service on our phones at ground level, and then we actually end up getting 4G service with the antenna. So it does come in handy, but really watch your expectations with cell phone boosters because they're very expensive and a lot of people get disappointed with the mediocre results they have.
Something I've been testing lately is, you heard of Skyrim?
Is that a satellite based?
No, it's basically a mobile hotspot that is not tied to any particular carrier. So you buy data like in chunks of 20 gigabytes.
Okay.
It never expires. And then when you turn it on, it searches 120 networks for the. So it works for like, you wouldn't want to use. It's expensive. So 20 gigabytes is $180. But when you need it as a backup.
Yeah. And you said Skyrim?
Skyrim.
Okay.
I think they call their device Solus, but it literally you can use it worldwide. It'll look for. It's very expensive, but if you want like a device that's sitting in the cabinet for that case.
Yeah.
Like I want to check the weather. If there's any, like you said, if there is cell service, it will find it.
Nice. Yeah, and I mean, there are other options popping up. I know Starlink or whatever the SpaceX stuff is, maybe that's going to come online in a few years. I don't know. That's an awesome option. I think it's going to revolutionize working remotely in vans and otherwise in other places. But yeah, so like when we're way out in the middle of nowhere, we need to get on our computers or we just want to watch a movie or something, we'll usually, and we really need signal, we'll throw up the mast antenna, turn on our cell booster, and tether from our phones. And that's worked really, really well for us. Another little splurge item is a fire pit. So if you're in an area where you're on grass or something, you don't want to damage the ground below, you can get a nice little portable fire pit. We have a Snow Peak, which is super premium, but it's really nice because it folds flat and we can put it on our bicycles and take it bike packing. Yeah, I mean, a lot of these other extra items are just creature comforts. What's nice when you go camping? Like, so you can get an awning, you can get like a nice ARB awning, or you can do like we did and have a DIY awning, which is just a tarp and some very nice sturdy collapsible poles. That works great, keeps the rain off. Nice camp chairs, little collapsible tables. Those sort of creature comforts make a big difference when you're out there. So van life resources. These are my two favorite and what I would recommend to anybody who's looking to get into van life, regardless of your budget. The first one is Far Out Ride. They're kind of my van life Bible. They have incredibly detailed and quality write-ups on all of the systems that you could want to do with a van or like minivan living or car living. They're an extremely nice reference. The other one is Nomad Home, spelled like gnome. So they're a little more budget or mid-range on the DIY stuff. They have a lot more options if you're trying to do this out of a car or out of a minivan. There's also some really great Facebook van life groups, but it is Facebook, so who knows what you're going to get on there as far as recommendations. You may get some terrible recommendations, or you may get really nice people who are trying to help you out. And then Google and YouTube are great resources. Really, before you trust anybody for doing things like electrical and plumbing though, definitely kind of have a critical eye when you're looking at their work to make sure it's not something that's going to burn your van up or flood it or something. But there are a lot of really good van resources all over the internet. And here's some build photos from when we built this van. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask now, or you're welcome to jump in the van and kind of poke around. Feel free to open any of the drawers and just have a look. Any questions? Yes.
Ballpark figure of cost for the van and cost for the build.
So cost for the van and cost for the build. What kind of build for what purpose? And so for this vehicle, I bought this van brand new in 2017 for $33,000, and we've put about 10 to 15,000 into upgrades. So expensive, but not super crazy. But you can do it a lot cheaper. You can get vehicles a lot cheaper, and you can do builds on really minimal budgets.
But what would this van cost you to
Oh God, yeah.
I'm that guy. Hold on here.
Yeah.
I sell RVs as commercial vehicles for a living. I couldn't tell you. It's whatever they want. I mean, it's nuts right now. I mean, RVs,
Your base van, this base van is probably costing you about 40,000.
if not, I mean,
Yeah.
Ford, for example, is selling trucks right now, 4,000 to 5,000 over MSRP, just because supply and demand is so crazy right now. So obviously, like, your best bet would be to just dig and dig and dig for that slightly used vehicle, trying to find that deal, or just wait it out. This is going to go away. Just eventually our economy will settle back down. But yeah, right now, I've been doing this for 15 years, and it's the craziest stuff I've ever seen.
Yeah, van builds, either custom built, so like if I sold mine right now, I would get way more money than I think it was worth. Someone would pay me happily for it. Pre-built vans, like commercially built vans from the big ones like Winnebago and other builders, I mean, those are easily $120,000.
$150 built. And
Yeah.
this one built be $150.
Storyteller is a brand that uses all of Mercedes, and it's the Cadillac, one of the Cadillacs out there. They're running right at 2.25.
Yeah, yeah, it's insane how much vans can cost. So if you're aiming for like a weekend rig or something, a lot of good options really are used minivans. I mean, I know the used car market's crazy right now. Used minivans are not bad. Floyd has the ProMaster. Oh, Transit Connect. Yeah, so you have like the smaller vans, the smaller cargo vans like Transit Connect, ProMaster City. I forgot what Mercedes version is. So there's a lot of good options out there that aren't like a full-size cargo van, that are cheaper and easier to maintain, or cheaper to maintain, I should say. Any other questions or comments? Yeah.
Did you already talk about your van or no? I got here a little bit late. So.
Not necessarily. I referenced it a few times in the talks. Is there anything in particular?
No, I just wanted to just like do the nickel tour real quick. Like,
Yeah.
Take 2 minutes to just explain what you got.
Yeah. So this van right here, I think it's a 2018 model, ProMaster. It's the ProMaster 2500. I built it out with the kind of a full-time mindset. So I've got a nice little bed in there, collapsible table, propane furnace for heating, so I get nice dry heat. It's plumbed, so I get on-demand water. I have my stovetop. Yeah, I've got all the room for the little creature comforts. The back, I have a 33-gallon water tank, 315 amp hours of batteries, so that holds me over pretty well. I think I can go with all my systems running in the winter 4 days without recharging, which is pretty good. So that's no solar panel coverage or driving. Water usually lasts, my wife and I, Sandra, about 2 weeks when we're like full-time on the road. I have the little fridge in there, and it's set up to fit 2 bicycles in the back. I have a pull-out rack for the bicycles. And so with the bicycles, all of our kayaking gear, and then kayaking gear or kayaks on top, we can be pretty loaded down for a very long time and be extremely comfortable while we travel. This summer, we're actually going to install a lithium battery system and a 12-volt AC system on the top. So we've been saving up a long time for that. So we're hopefully planning to be full-timers sometime in the next year and a half and take our little kitty with us. So we needed an AC system for her. But yeah, I think that's a decent overview, unless, Sandra, you have anything you think should be added?
I have one other quick question.
Yeah.
I'll quit asking.
No, you're good, you're good.
When you were in DC, did you have your kayaks and stuff on top?
Yeah, so if you're multi-sport or a whitewater kayaker, mountain biker, whatever, and you have gear that's typically outside the vehicle, So in our case, kayaks on the roof, but a lot of people have bikes on the back. Get something sturdy to lock it, and get something that looks sturdy to lock it. I've got some really heavy duty orange rubber coated chains that are real obvious. You can actually see them right there. You can pull those out. Yeah, so those guys are real tough, and you can still, if someone's motivated, they're still gonna get to them, but they look tough, which is the most important part. So yeah, when I was in DC, I would always lock my kayaks up.
And you didn't have any problems?
Well, as far as I know, I never had any issues. Yeah.
Around didn't like raise any red flags?
No, I don't think anybody ever messed with them, but if they did, they.
Like while you were sleeping in the van, so
No, actually, I mean, knock on wood, I've had a very good experience van lifing the entire time I've owned the vehicle. I've only gotten the knock once to move on somewhere, and I've not, like I said, knock on wood, not had any crazy people or anything or weird experiences out in the wilderness.
You gotta remember, most thieves are lazy.
Yeah.
This means they have to work.
That's definitely the mindset. People don't want to work to steal your stuff, but if it's there and easy, keep people honest, I think is the name of the game there. So yeah, if no other questions, that's the end of the talk tonight, but feel free to poke around as much as you want in there. And Sandra and I both are happy to answer. Sandra, raise your hand. Any of the questions you have about the build out. So thank you very much.